He was a billionaire who lost everything overnight. Money, power, name. But when the whole world turned away, a simple cleaning lady entered his office and changed his fate forever in a few seconds. The night was thick and anxious. Glass walls. Skyscraper Mendes Global Systems reflected the lights of Hamburg at night, as if the whole city was looking at a person who stood at the edge of defeat. Alejandro Mendes, founder and owner of one of the largest technology corporations. Europe, sitting in his office, clutching his temples. On 3 screens in front of him, red windows flashed with the words "System Vulnerado." The company's servers were under attack. The virus has penetrated deeply, erasing files, blocking shields, destroying for years. Built empire. His breathing became uneven. Everything was collapsing before our eyes. Contracts, connections, years of sleepless nights and ambitions. He leaned back in his chair, feeling despair, almost physical pain, build up in his chest. His fingers trembled as he entered commands again, hoping that at least something would respond, that some part of the system would open. But everything happened. In vain. Each attempt is like a blow to the void. The best engineers, programmers, and system engineers have already tried everything. No one was able to stop the destruction. His company, created out of nothing, was now dying. What was the point of these endless days and nights if everything could disappear in a few hours? His face was reflected on the screen, tired, drooping. His eyes are full of anger and powerlessness. He slammed his fist on the mahogany table. The sound reverberated through the office, but it did not bring relief. He looked at his watch. 23:30. Most of the employees have already left. He himself sent them home, not wanting to see pity in their eyes. Being alone in this glass coffin seemed right. Let it collapse without witnesses. Suddenly he heard footsteps in the hallway. Light, soft, with occasional squeaking of the wheels. Not security. And the guards walked differently. He raised his head and saw a figure through the transparent wall. A woman in a blue uniform, pushing. He frowned, trying to remember which of the staff worked at night. The woman stopped, noticing that he was still there. She stood for a few seconds, hesitating, then turned around to leave. Alejandro suddenly felt that he did not want her to leave. Her presence was somehow reassuring. She continued, work, wiped the tables, neatly placed the chairs, not even suspecting that a few meters away from her the whole world. But suddenly, as if feeling his gaze, she raised her head. Their eyes met. There was nothing in her gaze. Fear, no surprise, only quiet sympathy. She knocked gently on the glass, and he, without understanding why, motioned for her to come in. The woman opened the door and hesitantly entered. "Excuse me," she said softly, with a slight accent. "I don't want to get in the way, but you look like you're really bad." Alejandro grindo Arceli. "It all depends on what you call it badly. My company has just been destroyed, and no one, absolutely no one, can fix it." She came up a little closer and looked at the monitors, where error messages burned with red flashes. "A cyber attack?" she asked. "Be quiet." "Yes," he replied, sighing heavily. "But the best team of specialists could not do anything. It's over." The woman looked at the screens and frowned slightly. "Can I have a look?" He raised an eyebrow. "Should you take a look? It does not waver." "I know it sounds strange," she said quietly, "but maybe I can help. Sometimes those who are too close to the problem do not see the obvious." He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. A cleaning lady stood in front of him, talking about network architecture as calmly as if it were her profession. But there was no self-confidence in her voice, only certainty which did not require proof. "You have nothing to lose," she added. He was silent for a few seconds, then leaned back in his chair and said, "Okay, why not?" The woman walked over and sat down in front of the main monitor. Her fingers began to move across the keyboard confidently, quickly, with the precision of a professional. He watched her in disbelief. To his eyes, it opened hidden windows, wrote commands, bypassed protection systems. "It's worse than it seems," she said after a minute of work. "Yes, but those who attacked have a mistake in the structure. If your old backups, the copies were not connected to the main network, you can try to restore the data." "How do you know all this?" he asked in surprise. She did not take her eyes off the screen. Prior to that, I worked as a cybersecurity engineer at Corti Solutions, 8 years old. She left when her mother fell ill. This job just allowed me to be close to my family. He froze. A cleaning lady, a former engineer. I'm sorry, he said. She passed away 6 months ago, she replied calmly. But she taught me not to give up, even when it seems that everything lost. He felt something change inside him. She didn't try to impress. She didn't complain. Just acted. I need access to your main server, she said. And for several hours without breaks, Alejandro silently took out his map and handed it to her. You have full access. Do what you need to do. She looked up in surprise. You trust me only because I speak confidently. I trust because I have no choice, he replied. And because you're the only person who hasn't told me. I'm sorry, she smiled faintly. Then let's get started. But if everything works out, don't forget who helped you. They went down to the underground floor, where the main server was located. A huge steel door with biometric sensors, cold air and the hum of fans, the heart of the company. Welcome to the Mendes brain. Global Systems, he said with a bitter grin. Then let's bring him back to life, she replied calmly and put on gloves. She plugged in the console's laptop. His fingers slid over the keyboard again. Her movements were precise. Sure. The screen was filled with streams of code. They entered through the mail, created a mirror network, and injected a virus into the access right, she explained. But there is a chance. You still have old servers that haven't been updated, so some of the data is alive. Alejandro stood beside him, amazed. It was the first time he had seen someone handle his system with such calmness and skill. Tell me, what do you want? He asked. Coffee and 6 hours, she replied. He smiled for the first time that night. Just like a real leader, she replied, with a slight smile, but his eyes remained focused. The clock passed slowly. The office was filled with the sound of keys and the low hum of servers. Alejandro watched as this woman, whom he did not even notice before, fighting for his company with such determination as if it were her own life. At some point he brought her coffee. She thanked him without taking her eyes off the screen. It works, she said quietly. Slow, but it works. He sat down next to him. You've always been so persistent. Life has taught me, she replied. When my mother fell ill, the doctors said that there is no hope. I spent months looking for a way out, studying everything I could. I didn't save her, but I realized that the impossible is just something that no one dares to try again. He stared at her for a long time, without interrupting. I've forgotten what it means to believe, he said at last. Sometimes you need someone to remind you. Why did you start? She replied calmly. At 3 a.m., the screens suddenly began to be cleansed. Systems were restarted. Directories were restored. Red windows disappeared one by one. Did you do it? He whispered, not believing his eyes. I used the old standby servers and manually rebuilt access, she replied. She is tired but proud. Your information has not been lost. She was just waiting to be found. He sat down in an armchair, closing his eyes. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to. Just make sure you don't lose what really important. Dawn was breaking through the ventilation shafts, illuminating the room with a soft golden light. The inscription network, successfully restored, lit up on the screen. Alejandro stood up and looked at her. From today on, you are not a cleaning lady, Lucia, he said quietly. You're my new head of security. She shook her head in surprise. I just did what I thought it was right. That is why, he answered. You are the one this company needs. And at the moment when the first morning light lit up the server room, he realized that the night that had begun as a disaster was the beginning of something new, not only for his business, but also for himself. Monday morning was clear and cold. The city was waking up, the streets were coming to life. But for Lucia Herrera, it was a day she would always remember. Today, she was returning to the same Mendes Global Systems building, not as a cleaner, but as the new director of the department. Cybersecurity. She walked towards the entrance, holding a thin leather folder in her hands, and felt her heart beating faster than usual. Passers-by hurrying to work seemed ordinary, but for her this day was a turning point. She remembered the night she had gone down to the server room with a man she had only seen from afar before, and had helped him. to save an entire empire. The entrance guard, accustomed to seeing her in a blue uniform, froze as she passed by in a strict white jacket and trousers. His eyebrows rose, but Lucia only nodded, not wanting to embarrass him. In the elevator, she looked on his reflection in the mirrored wall. Her hands were still shaking, but not from fear, from the realization of how much her life had changed in a few days. When the doors opened on the 38th floor, she was greeted by Alejandro Mendes himself. He was standing against the glass wall, looking at the city, but hearing footsteps, he turned around. Today he was different, calm, collected, but something appeared in his gaze that had not been there before.
Warme participation.
Just in time, he said, smiling. I knew you wouldn't be late. Today is the first day, Lucia replied, smiling discreetly. It would be bad to start it late. Today is the first day of the rest of your career, he remarked with a slight touch of seriousness. They entered the meeting room. Heads of departments, CFO and CTO Rodrigo Campos have already gathered there, a tall man with a cold gaze. He watched her as Alejandro began to speak. First of all, you recognized one person. Thanks to her, we are here today. Lucia Herrera's room brightened up. Several people looked at each other, then whispered, "This is the same one from the night cleaning." Alejandro did not give time for gossip. Saved not only our data but also the company itself. As of today, she is the head of the security department. Rodrigo crossed his arms. I'm sorry, he said with a slight mockery. But you mean that the cleaning lady is now our boss? Security?
Ido, Alejandro replied firmly.
And if anyone doubts its qualifications, let them look at the restored systems. They have been working without failures for 3 days. Lucia looked directly at Rodrigo. Her voice was calm. I didn't come to replace anyone. I came to have more of this. Did not happen again. The silence that hung after these words was more eloquent than any applause. Even the most skeptical colleagues felt the strength of her confidence. After the meeting, Alejandro caught up with her in the hallway. You held on. Brilliant, he said. I just told the truth, she replied. Sometimes the truth is the rarest thing that can be heard in these walls. He suggested that she go through the departments, show everything that she now has to manage. When they took place, through the labs, the developers stopped to recognize it. Someone was smiling. Someone was whispering. Lucia tried not to pay attention. I felt that every step here was a test. It all keeps working thanks to you, Alejandro said as they walked past a series of servers. By luck, she said quietly. No, he replied, thanks to his talent. There was no flirtation in his voice, only sincerity, and this made the words sound special. The day passed in endless meetings and settings. Lucia immersed herself in the new protocols, checking every line of code. She found that the system is still vulnerable. Someone left hidden access paths, not a virus but a trace of human intervention. In the evening, when most of the staff had already left, she was still sitting in her office. On the screen in front of her, lines of commands flashed. My eyes hurt from fatigue. The door opened quietly. Alejandro looked inside. Are you still working? He asked. Almost. Finished, she replied without looking up. We need to close several ports. If I don't stop you'll fall asleep right on the keyboard. She smiled. It would not be the first time. He entered, put his hands in his pockets and stood side by side. For a few seconds, he was just silent, looking at how focused she was. There was something mesmerizing in her calmness, confidence of unassuming power. You're not like the others. Who works here? He said at last. This is not good. It's wonderful. She was a little embarrassed, but did not take her eyes off the monitor. I'm just doing my job. No, he replied. You gave me back what I lost. The word of faith hung between them. For a few seconds, they just looked at each other and both felt that between gratitude and something more there was only a thin facet. Lucia was the first to look away. We are not done saving the company yet, Senor Mendes, she said, softly. Then we'll finish and then I'll say it again, he replied with a smile. The following days were a test. Lucy and her team double-checked all the systems. Each new line of code revealed secrets left behind by someone inside. and the further she dug in, the clearer it became. This was not an accidental attack. Some of the employees helped the hackers. One evening, when she went down to the garage, her heart clenched with anxiety. She felt that she was being watched. A glance accidentally fell under the car, and there on the metal panel a tiny device flashed. Tracker. Lucy carefully removed it, hid it in her palm, and headed for Alejandro's office. He turned pale as she placed the device on the table. "It was under my car," she said. "Someone knows where I live when I go where I go." "We have to call the police," he said sharply. "No, if they find out that we have understood something, things will get worse. It is better to let them think that I did not notice anything." He silent, looking at her. "And what are you going to do?" To set a trap, they did so. On the night from Friday to Saturday, they stayed in the building alone. Lucia created a fake file with fake data and enabled tracking. Office plunged into semi-darkness. Only the light of the monitors illuminated her face. His heart was beating faster, but his hands were calm. Closer to midnight, footsteps were heard in the corridor. The door opened and Rodrigo Campos appeared on the threshold. He froze when he saw the lights on and Alejandra at the window. "What does it mean?" "It's cold," Alejandro asked. "I was just checking something," Rodrigo began, but his voice faltered. In the night, with Lucia's confidential data folder turned on the screen, open connections flashed on it, each of which led to an external server. "There is no point in further pretend," she said calmly. "We know that you leaked data to competitors." Rodrigo turned pale, then laughed. "Oh, you don't understand anything. This company has not been owned by you for a long time, Alejandro. Just showed the world who is the real boss here." "Masters don't hide at night," Alejandro replied. Rodrigo tried to leave, but the guards were already descending. A few minutes later, he was detained. Lucia turned off the system, feeling like the tension gradually releases. "Are you okay?" "Huh?" asked Alejandro. "I'm tired. But yes, it's over." He looked at on it for a long time without looking up. "No, Lucia, not everything. You just proved that you saved us twice." In the following days, the company was buzzing with news. The Rodrigo scandal exposed the inner network of traitors, and Lucia became a symbol. Recovery. The press called her the woman who saved the empire. At the celebration in honor of the restoration of the company, Alejandro took the stage. "A few weeks ago we were on the brink, but now we're here because one man wasn't afraid to do that he must." Lucia Herrera reminded us that courage is not a title, but an act. The applause did not subside. Lucy stood aside, smiling sheepishly. After the event, Alejandro approached her with a glass of champagne. "I have to admit," he said, "you didn't just change the company. You've changed me." She looked at him carefully. "I just reminded you that sometimes you have to trust people." "No," he said quietly. You taught me to believe again." He held out his hand. "Today there are no protocols and contracts, just dinner. No servers and attacks." "I agree." Lucia thought for a moment, then smiled. "If only this time I'm paying for coffee." They went out together on a cool evening. The city was reflected in puddles. It did not shine softly. For the first time in a long time, Alejandro felt that the world was full of life again. She walked beside her, not as a subordinate, but as an equal. And in the silence between them, something new was born. Not a promise or a contract, but a quiet, real feeling. That night, both realized that everything they had lost was needed to find each other.